Well, it came out of launch of mobile broadband. In the end of 2007, we launched mobile broadband, and it took off really rapidly. And we ended up taking about 40% of the market share in the UK. So we looked at all that data, and we realised we had very little visibility as to the performance of the service or the performance for individual customers. So we started looking at solutions then as to how you could actually understand inside the packets, themselves, what's actually happening, what is the actual performance for customers, but importantly also linking that to the network and which elements were involved in that network transaction. There's sort of probably three main aspects we're looking at. We wanted to use it for three different purposes. We wanted to use it for operations. We wanted to use it for network intelligence as to what's going on in the network, and we also wanted to use it for customer support. Mm-hmm. So we needed a solution that could provide interfaces and input to all those three things. That was a really critical part of the solution, and we previously have box monitoring solutions and traffic, sort of total volume monitoring solutions. But what we didn't know was what was happening. So things like TCP retransmissions, which are very important to speed and to perception of speed, was a sort of critical element of that, combined with the ability to monitor the signalling in the network and tie all that information to individual network elements. In terms of user, for example, on our customer care, we really wanted to see every session identified so that when somebody rings up, we can say, well, we know that they were using it at that time, we actually know what cell they're on, we know what network elements were being used, and we know the performance. So all those things were very important in the solution. Absolutely, yeah. We looked at quite a few solutions when we were looking at this, and there were competitors to Velocent at the time. And what we found with the solution that you had was it scales very well with the sort of mixture of hardware and software that you have. There are quite a few solutions where they're sort of mainly software based. They have no optimization, and it was very difficult to predict whether it would actually scale or not. And it was much easier to predict that the Velocent solution would scale. Yeah, there's a few things we found which we hadn't realised before. I mean, one example was we found a particular issue with the backhaul transmission network. This is a configuration issue, so it didn't show up in any alarms, it didn't show up in any traffic statistics, but what it meant was that some sites were getting much lower throughput than they should have been. And that really showed up in the TCP retransmission statistics and packet drop rate statistics that was able to be shown in one view. Yeah, we have two aspects. Both those we've learned quite a lot. I mean, on the network side, with the capturing the signalling information, it allows you to know which elements are being used, what types of connections are being used, things like direct tunnel in the packet core network, how that's being used. And then on the customer side, we know the speed that their customers experience. So when somebody rings in to the contact centre, we know they've used it when they used it last, where they used it, and how much speed they got and what sort of experience we think they got. So it really arms the advisors with a lot more useful information. We've got about 300 or 400 users a day on this now in the contact centres. So we have the frontline technical support for mobile broadband have access to it, and we have various different levels. So the first level, they just have a basic access, says we know that customer has accessed the service and we know some very basics about it, what device they're on, for example. Then the next level, second line support, get much more detailed information about performance, which might include what some elements, network elements they were using. And then back at our operations centre in the UK, they get a lot more information where they're a little bit separate from the customer. They can look more at the location information, they can look at the technical performance of each individual component on the network. So that three-tiered thing really works very well for us. We've seen an improvement in the first call resolution and the number of repeat calls. many initiatives have helped that, and this has been one of the key ones that have helped with that. And also we've been able to classify how many of our customers meet the speeds that we want. It's given us a lot of good marketing information as well. Yes, we have taken the measurements from OneView and put them into a network intelligence solution, which tries to analyse individual customers against various other bits of information we have on the network and on customers' tariffs. And that's given us some insight as to where performance is good, where it's poor, and the sort of profile things like during the day, what happens during the day, how does it slow down in the evening if it's getting busy. All that sort of information comes from the Velocent tool. We're trying to sort of extend it to a larger group of operations people at the moment. So we've earlier this year we deployed it to frontline and contact centre, and that's had a great effect in 2 or 3 months after we deployed it. It really improved the
frontline being...
This is the first line when you've got a technical problem. It's the first time you go into, if you don't ring up mobile broadband helpline, the first person you talk to, they have now something that says they know that you've been on the system, and they know the device, and they know some basic information from that solution. So we've taken it there. We've taken it to the second line, which is much more detailed, trying to solve a customer's problem, and then we've taken it to the third line, which is the real technical engineers at the back end trying to figure out problems. And we've taken it through various teams in the operations area. So we're just making sure every team. So we've looked at the RAN team, the radio team have got it. We're rolling out more towards the IP teams and the core network teams to get a greater usage. So it's really just extracting the most value we can from the tool now that we've deployed it. Yeah, we're actually already using that for informing that. So we, for example, one thing we do is we look at a report on device usage every month, and we use the output from Velocent. It classifies, gives us the device ID. So we look at that and we look at what is the usage by device. So we know now, what usage each smartphone is making, and how much traffic is generated by each smartphone. There's pros and cons of lots of different solutions. I mean, we looked at quite a few. Traditionally, there was the deep packet sort of tracing solutions, which are incredibly powerful, and you can put end-to-end lots of different devices and tracing. But when you work out, how much that is going to cost to actually roll out that complexity and the depth of that sort of tracing solution, it really gets very prohibitive. And what we found is that the balance it had with OneView was the right balance between breadth of measurement. It could measure all the traffic on the network, and depth. It could measure all the performance information that we needed. Because when it comes to tracing, you can always buy a very expensive tool and do some individual tracing and find a solution. But if you want to monitor every single customer in the network, you really need a solution that will scale as well as do that some depth as well. Got to be precise on the current commercial pricing because it was about 2 years ago I did this, but I think at the time, if you were to deploy an in-depth probing, it was around about 10 times more expensive to do that. There were some more direct competitors that did something more like OneView, but they were sort of price competitive, but they tend to be very software based, and they hadn't, the scalability really wasn't there. So by the time you'd actually scaled, whilst in theory it was the same, it was going to be 2 or 3 times more expensive. Again, you look at sort of what do you want to do with it. We wanted to monitor every single customer, and the problem with an end device solution is you have to support lots of different devices or lots of different PCs. So the practicality of getting 100% coverage is just not there. So we had to get a solution in the core to get that breadth of visibility. We're quite in favour of some end monitoring, but it probably will be limited and more of a sampling basis than it would be a complete measurement that we get from this. I am actually. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the video, of course. But no, actually, we are very satisfied. It was in a way quite a risk when we took it. It hadn't been deployed in many locations at the point we took it. We took it quite early, but we've been really pleased with the support that we've had from the team. It's been fantastic in Velocent, and the technology actually works. It's been very solid. We've had this going for many months with the contact centre. Haven't had an outage, and just gets on there and does the job. So we're very happy with it. Yeah, so we've got 3 data centres. We've got deployments in each data centre. We're running around about 20 gigabits per second of data through it at the moment in our network, which is by far the largest amount of data in the UK mobile broadband market. Yeah, we're very aware that deep packet inspection solutions have a little bit of a concern in the public about privacy of data. So there's 2 things we do to really comply with the Data Protection Act in the UK. One is that the location information is not available to the contact centre agents who talk to the customer. It's only available to people who do not talk to the customer and who are looking at engineering, effectively trying to find problems. So that's number one. The second one is that the solution, the OneView solution, we don't report back into our systems details about exactly what the customer's doing in terms of what pages they're viewing on a website. So we're really only interested in performance and performance of data, and that's what we actually extract and how we use it.
I think that's it.
Good. That was great.
Excellent.